Levin.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues of the House. I rise in opposition to House File 2612. I was kind of surprised to see this actually come to us because I see this as a solution in search of a problem. I think it's lovely that folks are saying that a review committee is reasonable, and I'm sure it's good to review things, but our AEAs go through recertification on a regular schedule. Our AEAs are reviewed, and they excel, and they exceed expectations, and no problems are noted. And so why are they flying through these recertification processes if there's such a big problem that we need to address? My question would be, if there are problems to address, if there is a specific problem that's being raised in a specific AEA, or if there's a group of community members, families, or superintendents who have a problem, why is that not being addressed through the system that's already in place, through the recertification process? This may sound a little bit redundant from my remarks last night about social studies curriculum. Again, we have processes to make changes when there are problems. Why are we overhauling systems instead? Representative Segrist, I was surprised to hear that the timeline was one of the things that made you feel more comfortable with the amendment, because one of the things that I'm hearing this morning that people are still concerned about is that the changes to the board are to be implemented as of July 1st, 2024. In the amendment, if I understand it correctly. That doesn't seem like a lot of time to me. The report that this was based on states that Iowa spends $14,387 on each special ed student. The report says a lot of things. I have the incredible honor of serving as a commissioner for the Education Commission of the States, which is a national organization that provides nonpartisan analysis of education issues. So I went to their report just to see if it matched up. According to that report, we spend less on our special education students than 18 other states, and we specifically spend $6,323 annually on each special education student. Now, I'm not automatically, without looking at each report in depth, assuming that one is absolutely correct and the other one is obviously wrong because one tends to better serve the narrative that I like. I'm not asking anyone to do that. What I'm asking you to do is to acknowledge that figures can be looked at and come to and arrived at in different ways. And perhaps when we have a study or a report that is created with an agenda, with a goal, we don't do things in a way that is open-minded. Maybe we look at data that will serve our points. I could do that here by noting that one of the kind of incredible things about Iowa's special education system is that we have fewer complaints and reports of being out of compliance than basically any other state, despite the fact that, according to the report I prefer, we're spending less than so many. One other thing that was brought to me by a constituent, actually not a constituent of mine, a constituent of someone else in the room now that I think about it, but someone who I happen to talk to, someone who comes to my district because they like one of the restaurants, was that currently, when there is a report that we are out of compliance with a student's IEP or 504 plan, that report goes directly to the special education administrator for that AEA, and it goes to the top of their list, their to-do list, to address that complaint or that report of out of compliance. And so often, within 48 hours, that complaint has been addressed, whether by determining that we are out of compliance and that we need to fix that and what do we need to do to fix it, or by getting back with the parent, scheduling a meeting, and discussing where it is that there's a miscommunication and whether that IEP or that 504 plan needs to be adjusted to meet the family's expectations. If these complaints are going to the Department of Education in Des Moines, I worry that that 48-hour timeline will get stretched out, and all of a sudden, we will have the rectification of these complaints and out-of-compliance reports taking days, weeks, months, and all of a sudden, what could have been solved with a couple of hours of work at the local level is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars in court fees because we are no longer at the top of the pack when it comes to addressing and implementing IEPs and 504s. There's one other thing I want to talk about, and it's sort of broad. As a lot of us have come to learn over the past exactly 2 months now, AEAs do a lot for our schools, aside from serve special ed students. In fact, that was noted as the problem in some ways, I felt, in the condition of the state. I personally was employed by Grantwood AEA as a substitute teacher for 3 years when I first graduated from college and was looking for my first full-time teaching job. Now, Iowa City Community Schools, where I live and represent now, they can afford to have their own substitute management services. But the surrounding districts, the others that are served by Grantwood AEA, are better served by pooling those resources. Now, a lot of those opportunities to pool resources are preserved in this amendment at the moment. As we chip away at our AEAs, as people feel that their jobs are in jeopardy, as they see job postings going up and coming down on the Department of Education website, and they choose to leave, yeah, services are going to get harder to fill. This bill is a solution in search of a problem. And if there is a problem, we already have a process for addressing it. Why, once again, are we overhauling an entire system? And I apologize, Representative Wheeler. I realize that that's not how you define this, as an overhaul of the entire system. But my folks back home still see it that way. I still see it that way. And so I ask why we aren't simply addressing the recertification process and why that's not coming up with the problems and adjusting the recertification process rather than enacting new legislation, new code, enlarging state law, growing the government here in Des Moines, and taking things away from locals. Thank you for your attention. Please vote no on 2612.
Chair recognizes Representative Ingalls.